Finally, the last step, if we go back again 2 slides, the last thing that we did was to calculate a conditional probability of this kind, probability of A given B, which is a probability associated essentially with an inference problem. Given that our radar recorded something, how likely is it that the plane was up there? So we're trying to infer whether a plane was up there or not based on the information that we got. So let's generalize once more. And we're just going to rewrite what we did in that example, but in terms of general symbols instead of the specific numbers. So once more, the model that we have involves probabilities of the different scenarios. These, we call them prior probabilities. There are our initial beliefs about how likely each scenario is to occur. We also have a model of our measuring device that tells us, under that scenario, how likely is it that our radar will register something or not. So we're given, again, these conditional probabilities. We're given the conditional probabilities of these branches. Then we're told that event B occurred. And on the basis of this new information, we want to form some new beliefs about the relative likelihood of the different scenarios. Going back again to our radar example, an airplane was present with probability 5%. Given that the radar recorded something, we're going to change our beliefs. Now, a plane is present with probability 34%. The radar, since we saw something, we are going to revise our beliefs as to whether a plane is out there or is not there. And so what we need to do is to calculate the conditional probabilities of the different scenarios given the information that we got. So initially, we have these probabilities for the different scenarios. Once we get the information, we update them and we calculate our revised probabilities or conditional probabilities given the observation that we made. Okay, so what do? We just use the definition of conditional probabilities twice. By definition, the conditional probability is the probability of two things happening divided by the probability of the conditioning event. Now I'm using the definition of conditional probabilities once more, or rather I use the multiplication rule. The probability of two things happening is the probability of the first and the second. So these are things that are given to us. They're the probabilities of the different scenarios, and it's the model of our measuring device, which we assume to be available. And how about the denominator? This is the total probability of the event B. But we just found that it's easy to calculate using the formula in the previous slide. To find the overall probability of event B occurring, we look at the probabilities of B occurring under the different scenario and weigh them according to the probabilities of all the scenarios. So in the end, we have a formula for the conditional probability, A is given B, based on the data of the problem, which were probabilities of the different scenarios and conditional probabilities of B given the A's. So what this calculation does is basically it reverses the order of conditioning. We are given conditional probabilities of this kind, where it's B given A, and we produce new conditional probabilities where things go the other way. So schematically, what's happening here is that we have a model of cause and effect. And so a scenario occurs, and that may cause B to happen or may not cause it to happen. So this is a cause-effect model. And it's modeled using probabilities such as probability of B given AI. And what we want to do is inference, where we're told that B occurs, and we want to infer whether AI also occurred or not. And the appropriate probabilities for that are the conditional probabilities that A occurred given that B occurred. So we are starting with a causal model of our situation. It models from a given cause how likely is a certain effect to be observed. And then we do inference, which answers the question, given that the effect was observed, how likely is it that the world was in this particular situation or state or scenario?